And without further ado, I will introduce our speaker, who is Haley Harold with the Safe Bar Network, and her presentation is entitled Safe Night Out, Partnering with Bars, Nightclubs, and Restaurants to Prevent Sexual Harassment and Assault. And I'll pass it over to Haley.
Thank you, Anna. Again, I'm Haley Harold. Pronouns are she, her, and I lead the Safe Bar Network. We are a nonprofit organization focused on partnering with bars, restaurants, nightclubs, other alcohol serving venues to work to increase safety and prevent sexual harassment and sexual assault. And we do that through facilitated conversations about noticing concerning behavior, using bystander intervention skills to interrupt in a way that's effective, and then norms change, creating a culture where everyone buys into these efforts to increase safety and prevent violence. I want to share a little bit with you about how I came to prevention work. And while I'm doing that, I'm gonna ask you the same question. So I'll post it in the chat box quickly, but I'd love to know where your journey with prevention work began. And maybe this is your first step into violence prevention work. So I would love to hear that too. But as I'm sharing, please let us know where your journey with prevention work began. So I'm from a small town just south of Eugene, Oregon. If you've ever been to Eugene, flown through Eugene, driven through Eugene, you'll notice that there's a lot of earthy, organic, hippie types. It's kind of in the ethos here. My small town was not that. So farmers, wheat fields, just not similar to Eugene, although we're only 8 minutes down the freeway. When I was in high school, I remember when the violence prevention person came to speak to my class. She was from Eugene and fit all of the stereotypes. I actually remember exactly what she looked like, even though it's like 25 years later. She had on Birkenstocks and like colorful wool socks and this amazing corduroy purple skirt. And she had on this huge sweater. It looked like she knit it herself, which is incredible. It was baby poop green and brown, so like 1970s couch sweater. And then she had Merida hair from Brave, just whoosh. So imagine that woman walks into your high school classroom. She caught our attention immediately. We're like, yes, like this hour is going to be so cool. But then it wasn't. Unfortunately, she stood stick straight and in a very monotone voice, she recited statistics about violence, and I don't know even what she said. Even though I was a good student, it was painful to try to pay attention. And the sad thing is, you know, a day later, weeks later, months later, people around me experience violence. And I don't know what to do to help them. I certainly don't know what to do to prevent it. And a lot of times with sexual violence, I don't even know that's what has happened has a name, right? That there's a name that you can give it. So when I was in college, quite a few of my friends experienced sexual assault. When I was done with college, I felt really called to do this work and to do it differently. I kind of left with this sense that like, if only the education I got in high school would have been different, maybe I would have been able to help, maybe I would have been able to prevent these things. So in that spirit, I would really like us to have an engaging session. It's not my style, nor do I think it's the best way to learn, to have one person talk and everybody listen. So I'm going to ask you to be vulnerable and go on this journey with me. If you feel comfortable turning on your cameras, I would love to see all of your faces. I would love for you to see each other's faces. And then there's going to be lots of opportunities to interact with each other by sharing during the session, and then we're gonna go into a breakout room and spend some time kind of talking through the framework I use to create a program focused on a specific community. So I actually really struggle on Zoom knowing when it's my turn to talk. I never want to interrupt people. And so I've figured out a system that I think works really well. So everyone's mic is muted right now, but when you're ready to share, absolutely unmute your mic and jump in. If you have a question for me as I'm talking, just interrupt me, it's great. But also, If you unmute your mic, then I'll know you want to share and I'll invite you into the conversation. And I ask Anna, our moderator, to help me out with that. So when you notice that someone's mic is unmuted, please invite them into the conversation to share. Okay, so my goals for our hour together are really simple, 2 things. So we're going to come together, we're going to explore all of the opportunities for prevention in our communities, maybe some unlikely partnerships or allies. And then the second is just that it's a really good use of your time. So we'll circle back to those 2 goals at the end, and hopefully we've achieved both of them. All right, so what I've learned through my work with the Safe Bar Network and partnering with bars and restaurants is that there are endless opportunities for partnerships in communities big and small. The incredible work that you're all doing to build relationships in your communities, coupled with the increased knowledge and awareness brought on by the Me Too movement, has led to, we've raised the bar of knowledge. And there are so many people in our communities who are really eager to have this knowledge and also feel or are starting to understand their responsibility to work to prevent sexual harassment and sexual assault. So the opportunities are endless. I want to take a few minutes to brainstorm together different industries, fields, groups, businesses in your communities that you think might be a good fit for learning something about violence prevention or learning about your agency's services. So I'll post my question in the chat box. And please feel free to, in true brainstorming fashion, no wrong answers here. Feel free to unmute your mic and share who you think might be a good partner.
I'm trying not to be a teacher's pet and like I'm always the one at the front that's like, I'm so excited, but I'm going to do it just to kick it off and hope that others will follow if I start. But I'm thinking about like impacted communities, people who are more disproportionately impacted by sexual violence would make important community partners. And in terms of industries, gosh, yeah, I mean, I know we're here because we're talking about alcohol serving establishments, so that's the one that comes quickly to mind. But also just other people working in sexual health seem like they'd be good partners too.
Thanks, Chris.
Someone else should go. I opened the door for you and made it easier. Jump in.
Public housing programs, schools, faith communities, local nightclubs, tattoo parlors, apartment managers, medical professionals, substance use disorder services, colleges, convenience stores, hair salons, banks, barber shops. Grassroots organizations across issues, yeah. So this is exactly how the Safe Bar Network started. It started out of a brainstorming session. I worked at a rape crisis center in Kansas City called MOXA for almost 9 years. And one of my roles there was facilitating the Sexual Assault Awareness Month Committee. So every August or September, just depending on how together we were, we would start by brainstorming who was going to be our target audience for that April. and what our messaging was going to be. So back in 2016, the committee happened to have quite a few people who worked part-time in bars and restaurants on it. And so through our brainstorming session, people really thought that the bar and restaurant community in Kansas City had a need for our education, but also had so many wonderful people who were already using bystander intervention skills. So the knowledge was already there. They already had some capacity to support the program. And then the committee also felt like we had the expertise where we could create something that was both effective and that our community would buy into and take on. So thanks for brainstorming with me. Okay, so I put together a tool for this group that really outlines how we started this program. And my goal is that it will be useful if you want to start a bar outreach program, but also it will be useful for all of these other communities, fields, sectors that we brainstorm. So I'm going to share that document with you in the chat. Okay, let me make sure I go to my right page for that. I'll share the link. It's just a Google Drive document. Please let me know if for some reason I didn't get the permissions right and you can't see it. I'll also pull it up on my screen. All right. Through how build relationships with bars, and then we're going to get in breakout groups of about 4 people and to encourage you to use this same document and brainstorm with each other community. So you will leave this session with a bar program or a program with another community, maybe hair salons, barber shops, tattoo parlors, faith communities, whatever it will be. Okay, permissioned work. Thank you, Dina. I appreciate that. All right, so the first step is to take stock of what prevention programs you're already using and what can be adapted for other audiences. So at MCCASA in 2016, we had a year or two into several different programs. So Green Dot program for middle schoolers, Agent of Change for high schoolers, crime prevention through environmental design and community connectedness for a countywide project that we were doing. And so we took the pieces of all of those different programs that we were doing, the parts that we thought were really most effective and working well, and we set those aside as potential objectives for the program that we were going to create. If you're not already familiar with prevention programs that are out there, there's a whole toolkit from the CDC, and I know that NCCASA and NSVRC and Prevent Connect and other similar agencies would be more than willing to help you kind of explore what's out there. And there's also several, at least a couple free programs, free curriculums that you could look through and see if they would be adaptable to work for your community, some evidence-based programs. So then the next step was brainstorming, who do we already have relationships with? Who's going to make a good partner? Where is need the greatest? Where can we have the greatest impact? Or who's already expressed some interest in learning something about this or having a training from our agency? And then the third step is really aligning values. I think that this is the most important step because if your values aren't aligned from the outset, you'll hit a roadblock down the road. So for us, our values at MCCASA were really to be survivor-centered and to center voices in our community and the work that we were doing. So when we worked with bar and restaurant folks to develop the program and to launch it, we worked with a lot of people who already volunteered for our agency or who donated to our agency or who worked in other fields that had connected with us because we wanted to honor that value of being survivor-centered and keeping our focus there. And then we laid the groundwork to work together. So we knew that there was expertise in the industry, and we knew that we were coming with our own expertise in prevention. And then we sat down together and we worked to adapt the programming. So what that looked like was, first, like, what are we setting out to achieve? So for us, we were setting out to achieve norms change. So we wanted to create this norm in all of these bars and restaurants that part of working hard was recognizing when someone's unsafe or uncomfortable and checking in with them, doing that customer service piece, and then supporting each other in that role, because a lot of times, you know, people don't know each other well when they're intervening, or maybe there's alcohol involved, and a whole host of other reasons why that interaction can either go really great or really poorly. And we wanted to be sure that one of the objectives were that people were prepared to support each other. And then the biggest piece was figuring out how much time we were going to have. These were the longest conversations we had, because there was a lot of back and forth and talking to lots of different bar owners to figure out, like, what does a staff meeting look like? Who's typically there? Are people paid to be there? Are they not paid to be there? How long are they? And what we settled on was that for most bars in our community, we were going to get 1 hour of time. So I know for anyone who does prevention work or education work, 1 hour goes by so fast. And initially we really had a conversation and had to question whether that was going to be enough time to achieve our objectives and to reach our goals of prevention. Was that going to be time? But that was all the time that we were going to get from the bars and restaurants in our community. And from there, we started to build an outline. And what we settled on was a facilitation method from TOPS called focused conversations. So it's a technique of facilitation that really is engineered to encourage participation. So it's not a lecture. There's not a lot of like specialized knowledge that we're giving people. It's really facilitating a conversation that then we hoped they were going to have every night of the week. So then the next thing that we did was begin to roll out the program and really cement buy-in. So what we chose to do to cement buy-in was make owners and general managers part of the training, which felt risky to us in the beginning, but now and so many of these trainings, we've really seen how it can be valuable. So either the owner or general manager, they talk about why the training is important to them personally to start the training. So we don't run into like, oh, hey, we have to do this. Glad you're here. Please be good. Whatever. I've had so many of those introductions and they just don't start the training off well. So they talk about why it's important to them. And then we facilitate the conversation, and every training ends with two things: why the training is important to their business and why it's part of working hard, and then a commitment to continuing the conversation. So in most of the bars that the Safe Bar Network works with, what that looks like is on a busy Friday or Saturday night, everything's kind of closed up for the night. They'll debrief what happened, like what were the situations that came up tonight, how did we intervene in those situations, and then again, the big part, providing each other support around what happened. And then the last piece is nurturing the relationship. So this was another surprise for us at MOXA, and definitely for me in the work that I do at the Safe Bar Network. It's felt a lot like mentorship, which I didn't expect. So a lot of the owners and managers that we work with have never had a conversation about sexual assault, and the only conversation they've ever had about sexual harassment was in a corporate setting and really focused on liability. So we're asking them to think about these things in a new way, and we're asking them to continue to make progress and build knowledge alongside of us, and that's both been really rewarding and really challenging, and also has taken a ton of time and energy, as I'm sure you can imagine. So that was the framework that we that we used to start the Safe Bar Network, and how it transitioned from a Sexual Assault Awareness Month outreach program to a nonprofit organization on its own, is that a few bar owners who own some big college bars throughout the Midwest came to us and said, hey, you know, we heard about this program that you're doing with bars and restaurants. We want to learn more. And through that relationship, we started training their bars throughout the Midwest, and we started seeing some really positive changes, some really great norms changes in their bars, and increased. They felt that they really had a responsibility to make the training available to other bar owners. So that is how we launched the Safe Bar Network. So I'd love to open it up to any questions, and then we'll break into groups and work through this document in small groups and think through what are the opportunities in your community.
I don't see any questions in the chat box so far. If anyone would like to unmute and join the discussion, you are welcome to. I had a question, Haley. You just mentioned that you started seeing a lot of positive norms change in the college bars that y'all were working with. Can you tell us a little bit more about what those changes look like?
I would absolutely be happy to. So the way that the training is set out is we first talk about noticing concerning behaviors, which includes using alcohol as a tool, violating boundaries, crossing boundaries, and then isolation. So in each of those, in small groups, the staff talks through what they actually see in their bar. So they talk a little bit about boundary violations, come back together, talk a little bit about how alcohol is used as a tool, come back together. So in those brainstorming sessions where they're talking about things that they see, every bar across the board notices or recognizes that someone who's had too much to drink, been overserved, is not safe in their bar, and that's an opportunity to help someone and check in and intervene. So that happens across the board. And very early on, when we get to the part of the training where they're brainstorming all the solutions, in every bar we've trained, there's good answers. And in these college bars specifically, great answers, but all over the board, nothing consistent, just anything you can think of that might help, we've heard. And in this last round of training that I've done, and I'll take a bar in Bloomington, Indiana, for example. It's a giant bar. One year they had 900 W-2s. So they have a lot of student staff in and out. We usually train 6 trainings of 50 people each time that we're there, twice a year. So big trainings, and across all 6 trainings, every single group said the same 4 things in the same order. So when I threw the example to them, like, okay, you see someone who's had too much to drink, what do you do in that situation? Every group said, we're going to get them water, we're going to get them food, we're going to help them find their friends because we know that's the safest option for them. And then if we can't do that, we're going to make sure that they get home safely. And I had done a lot of work before that in middle and high schools. Some of the schools I had worked with for 8 years, and I never saw that level of norms change. And they didn't decide on these 4 things they're going to do because a policy was posted or it was put in a handbook, or, you know, there was a poster in the back of the house. They came through it through conversations. And that became the norm, that if someone has had too much to drink, these are the 4 things we're going to do to make sure that they have a good time, but more importantly, that they're safe. Really an exciting moment for me.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay, well, it looks like there's no more questions for now. So if you want to keep moving, we can have more questions at the end too.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to put everybody in breakout groups of about 4 people. And what I would like you to spend about 10 minutes doing in your breakout groups is talking through the building successful partnership sheets together. So what ideally that would look like is everybody shares a little bit about the first step. So what programs they're already doing, or maybe someone shares that like, we currently don't have any programs, and someone else in the group can give them some ideas. And then once everyone's had an opportunity to kind of talk through that first one, move to the second one and think about like in your community, who might be those great partners. Yeah, that's a really good point, Melissa, you bring up about COVID. We haven't trained any bars or restaurants because they're either closed or they're working on such a small staff that it doesn't really make sense to do a full staff training. The other side of that, though, that's really interesting is we've had a lot of bars and restaurants contact us that they're interested in training once they're back open. So although we're not doing any training right now, we're spending a lot of time connecting with bars and restaurants we're going to train hopefully sometime soon. Yeah, but back to the prevention programs piece. So we had the fortune of being a large agency that had put a lot of money into prevention. So we had prevention programs that we were working on. There are free prevention programs that you can use. Shifting Boundaries is one of them. It's kind of an older one, so it need a lot of adapting. And then there's another program, it's for domestic violence. It might be called Cut It Out. It's with hair salons, and it's also a free program. That I know someone who uses that and has found it really, really successful. The other thing that I know to be true is that all of the sexual and domestic violence agencies have so much knowledge about the dynamics that even if you're not working with a prevention curriculum, I'm certain that you have expertise that you could adapt for your community. So I think that's another option. All right, it looks like everyone's coming back, so I'm going to end the breakout rooms. All right, it looks like almost everybody's back. All right, for the last 15 minutes, I'd love to spend most of that time talking about what you all talked about in your breakout rooms, and then we'll save a little bit of time to talk through a tool for evaluating your program, and then we'll wrap up for the day. So what are some thoughts and ideas that came out during your breakout room?
One of the things that we spoke about was I've been having a lot of trouble getting into our school system. And what we came up with to try to help it along was to try to keep making contacts and do small contacts through the school, maybe getting in touch with the counselors or just getting small groups and letting teachers know the services that we offer. Because so far we've not been allowed in the school system.
Yeah, I know that's a challenge in so many communities. I think that the strategy that you've talked about sounds really great, like a great way to build relationships. I also know that in some communities, you're the expert on your own. Parents have a lot of power. So I've seen people have success like starting with parent groups, which is a very hard audience to capture. But they've been able to turn that into sessions in the classroom. Thanks for bringing that up, Sarah. What else came up in your breakout rooms? What thoughts and ideas? Great question, Tori. So Tori asks, is sexual violence prevention even a priority for bar owners right now?
Can I answer that? Because that's
Absolutely.
one of the things that we did talk about just briefly, is that the bars around here are more like pubs, but yes, we've been involved in them, and they are very concerned because they can actually be held liable for over serving or somebody being assaulted.
Yeah. Yeah. That's absolutely spot on. I think that the majority of bar owners that I've talked to and kind of getting a pulse on the industry is that they're really in survival mode. So they're either working with a skeletal staff or they're completely shut down. But for bars that have a structure and a business model that they work off and they know they're going to reopen, they've been really willing to have conversations about staff training. And I think a lot of the reason is because they're going to have to hire new staffs. So it's a great opportunity when things reopen, and I know we don't really know when that's going to be, but it's a great opportunity to train bar staff because many of them will have brand new teams. A lot of people have left the industry, or they weren't able to pay their employees through the shutdowns and quarantine and social distancing and everything that's happened this year.
Actually, 2 of the pubs let us place coasters in there with the power and control wheels, and they did utilize them. That was just one thing that we were able to do to get the message out.
What a great idea. Thanks for sharing that, Sarah. That's a really wonderful idea. What else came up in your breakout rooms? What other thoughts and ideas? I'd love to hear from one more person before I share a tool that I use for evaluation.
We had a similar conversation, Quinn and I, about how bar owners are not wanting trainings right now and assuming that that's not applicable. And we had just talked about like how to address in COVID time had the fact that people are drinking, but probably in other spaces, and that assault is still occurring in different settings that we might not be able to recognize right now, and trying to identify what those spaces look like or how to gain access to those individuals for prevention and intervention.
Thanks for sharing, Anna. That's a really good point, and may also be, although it's not an easily defined community, it may be a new community to think about. In the work that we've done with college bars, we've partnered with some student groups to provide a training called How to Have a Safe Party, which is essentially the exact same conversation, but in the context of a house party, because on the IU campus, what we found was there's a population of people 21 who go to bars, and then there's a population of people 21 and younger who go to house parties, and they were really, they were student focused, so of everybody, and that was both a fun conversation to lead, but I think that they also found it helpful. So just another way that you can adapt prevention programming for specific audiences. I'm really glad you brought that up. It is a little bit of a waiting game, it feels like, for bars and restaurants, even when there are bars that are interested. Okay, I'm going to share another Google document with you, and this is an evaluation worksheet. I adapted it from one of the many CDC tools that I find not super, although wonderful, not super user-friendly. So how I've used this tool in the past is I've sat down with community partners, middle school counselors, high school principals, bar owners, and I've walked through all of the questions in the worksheet, And from that, been able to identify what are our objectives, what are our measurables, and how are we going to measure those things to see if we're meeting our objectives. And 100% of the time, by walking through this worksheet with community partners, new things come up, ideas that I never thought of, different measurables that maybe I either didn't think about or wouldn't old enough to ask if they would give me the data. Okay, so not a good link. Let me try again. Or maybe I just copied the wrong link. Probably more accurate. Okay, thank you so much for letting me know that. Try this one. Okay, so as we wrap up, I wanted to make you aware of a couple different bar focused options. So if you are already working with bars and just want to talk with other people, or if you're working on safe nightlife prevention programming, or you're looking for a prevention network, I host a networking event. Oops, I think I just sent that to Melissa. Sorry, technology. Okay, sorry, back to what I was saying. I hold a networking event called the Safe Night Out Connector, and it's just an opportunity to get together with other prevention folks or people wanting to do prevention work in their communities and talk through different issues and topics and create great supportive relationships. So the next connector we're having is February 9th, and we're going to focus on implicit bias in bystander intervention work. I'm going to co-host that with a good friend, Tanji Reese from 1124. So if you want to join that connector and network with other violence prevention folks, you can just send me an email. Really simple. I'll add you to the invitation list. And then I wanted to acknowledge Quinn from Our Voice in Asheville, North Carolina. Quinn has a bar program in Asheville, and I checked in with Quinn ahead of time, and you can absolutely reach out to Our Voice, and I think that they provide train the trainer for bar work, and then also they're happy to share the work that they're doing. And then another resource is the Safe Bar Network. If you are interested in building a Safe Bar program or strengthening the one you already have, super happy to help. It's as easy as reaching out, sending me an email. Thank you all so much for the hour that you spent with me. I hope that we achieved the goal of, one, coming together to talk about prevention opportunities, and two, that it was a good use of your time.